Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted that you could come out for this year's Offen Poetry Prize and a reading by our visiting poet, Jennifer Nelson, and our local poet and prize winner, Sophia Ray. Jennifer Nelson, whom I'll introduce, is the author of 3 books of poetry, one forthcoming, right? And one book recently out of art history. So, poet and art historian. She teaches art history at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Now, at Chicago, we cling to our ideal of interdisciplinarity. We hold this very close to our hearts because everybody else tells us that we're not supposed to do it, right? People have this notion that if you're a poet and an art historian, then you're really only half a poet and half an art historian. And if you're 2 or 3 other things, then you have to be dividing your mind, your attention, your vital forces in so many fragments. This, of course, is not true, but we in Chicago are the people who seemingly alone among the masses of humanity say that it's not true. Right? We think of interdisciplinarity as a kind of a conjoined set of strengths. And the next time somebody asks me to explain that point, I will use Jennifer Nelson as my example. Because she's such a good poet that she can be such a good art historian. And it's because she is such a good art historian that she's such a good poet. You can see many reasons for this judgment in the book that's outside on the table, being made available to the public by the Seminary Co-op. It's a short book of poems, but all extraordinary poems, called Aim at the Centaur Stealing Your Wife. The title is from a poem that's taken from a Polaiuolo painting, and in that title poem, as in so many poems of that collection, Jennifer does what she, I would say, practically uniquely does. She discovers details in pictures that you've seen 1,000 times, pictures that are printed in all the art history textbooks and of which you probably have a kind of a vague and fuzzy impression, but which are actually full of lively, interesting details that you never noticed until Jennifer pointed them out to you. So a faculty of observation, a faculty of attention and selection, and I would say elevation that brings to life the ignored detail, animates it, gives it a personality, a story, desires, and reactions. In many of these poems, you see Jennifer arguing with these marginal figures drawn out of the shadows of these paintings. And her own dialogues and arguments with the figures of painting bring painting into poetry in a way that's not just the classical ekphrasis, where the writer is supposed to be in front of an object and describing it in all its endless and often inert detail. But this is something sort of magical where the paintings pop off the painted surface and become members of an argument or a discussion group with Jennifer. The new book, Disharmony of the Spheres, I would love to tell you all about, but I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet. It is a study of the very famous painting by Holbein, The Ambassadors. A bold choice, because everybody from Lacan to Foucault to Greenblatt has been all over this painting. And yet, I predict confidently, not having seen anything but the publisher's announcement of the book, but nonetheless, I am bold to say that she will make us see new things in it, simultaneously in its realistic and its anamorphic worlds. I think of Jennifer, whose departure from Chicago I greatly regret, as a kind of a walking Wunderkammer, making speakable the eccentricities and excellencies of nature and art. And that is why I'm happy to present her this evening as the visiting poet and as the conferrer of the Offen Poetry Prize. Jennifer, welcome to Chicago.
Thank you so much, Han. That by far is like the coolest introduction I could ever imagine receiving. I'd like to thank the Poetry and Poetics Committee and the Creative Writing Program here for inviting me, and then also, of course, Han again, and Starsha for all your help, and also you, Jen Scapitoni, for assuring me about certain details. I wanted to read first a poem from my second book because it seemed like this would be a good, appropriate place to read it. I've never read it before. The Dunes of Lake Michigan for MHTS. The secret behind the story, the shortest. The baby was born without feet, descended from hidden people at the center of the earth and the beginning of history. It floated inches over the ground, left no trace, but discoursed merrily. For the rest of the night, I want to read poems from my next book, Harm Eaten, which will be out in about a year, from Ugly Duckling. And yeah, I'll just get right to it. I have a secret. I have a secret. I have given my life to history, and I do not care about history. I care about the deceitful stillness of water cut off from its home and the fragility of skin, all skin, as the brave interface. I want to skin the knee of water. I want to tell you something so true you sing like legs, carrying our hopelessly binary meaning in a third direction. This is the way night looks from the top of the Tower of Babel. On top of the Tower of Babel, we've murdered all possible kinds of building, all possible kinds of labor, and every architectural style. We sit there, waiting for night that cannot reach us, or at least mostly doesn't anymore. It is the most beautiful meaning I've ever seen or heard, watching you walk your song back to me on this once impossible patio built on the death of work and suffering, but somehow not of difference. We kept the curse. We have herb gardens. I am making you a salad now of fruit and sinless venison. Water condenses when it wills, saltlessly out of the eyes of anyone who agrees. Time doesn't need sight or detection. Without them, I keep its other name. But no. I am alone, a lone, long road on white, cross fields I cross fields while populate they people with corn, the grid, the long white grid gone color, the collar, the call said wait on the side for the bell, for the bellows to spring up the meadows, the earth as bellows. The answer was no. The answerer, no. The respondent fixed the magnetic North Pole. The North was electric. The wires sloughed off themselves, their oaring, a roaring earth ribbons the sky, ribbons or rhythms. This star was deciduous. This star fell down a stair. The fields ascend, scatter, go inside, not on, where you are alone. A lone, long road where cross, where sight, where compass, where night, all singing the snow, the matter, the answer was no. How's your endurance right now? Can you do something? All right, we're gonna go through a long poem. It's the title poem of the next book. And it's also an acrostic. Not that you're supposed to keep track. Someone did that once to me after reading it. It creeped me out. So if you do keep track, don't tell me. This summer I was between homes for a little while due to an evil landlord. Anyone ever had one of those? And so the poem basically has the names of everybody who let me stay with them all summer long. So it's called So Many Thanks, or Harm Eaten. 0. So much supposed to be beautiful is beautiful only because it's not alive, not mixed, not the first chimera, which is world and outworld, needing each other to stay young and old, respectively. Tell you the truth, harm's the only garden here, and recovery its asters. News comes from repeating knobs of wisteria, oozing slugs, and corn silk flies, one. Singing upside down about Earth's automobiles and jets to insensible and wild hydrangeas and osprey. Guillotines chatter in streets, upkept by professional immigrants, streaming laundry lines of visas, left hands raised, an oathing crusade infidelity under skyscraper chuppahs, melting in terrorist ecstasy. This is also the museum. 2. Running away is not an option. Everyone, of course, runs back into the same elephant, working their personal circus, one ring closing on the audience. All the winding wrinkles say, maybe we are the entertainment. If we feed, say, mosquitoes, we should know this is our particular effect, in other words, meaning. Olive groves still exist, lined with cats who invest in the end of all resources. Value this, per their tall-tailed ends well licked. What better reverence to Athena than this? 3. Autoimmune snake, reclining gently into its own tail and forgiving itself its own nature, scale by scale. All animals self-metaphorize. Animal humans most of all. Listen, every morning issues its own frequency, cicada style. What if everyone knew their sonic simile? Or, as a form of greeting, rubbing limbs carefully and matching each oscillation, the sound would crowd out silent xenophobia. The number 2 tells us we should have bypassed 5, Janus by now, and the binary. Every day we survive the U.S.-American blight, we plant new engines for a world, 6, jump-started past comparatives. Engineers push code back into its own navel, a spring in itself, no input. I said this before. Imagine yearning twinned with love satisfied. A listserv everyone checks, to which no one subscribes. East brings the sun, and come to think of it, how could our paradise run its self-destruction and not intermit? Suffering, like the tide, intercepts itself nonstop. There is no final exhibition of capital. But home, which flickers relentless as a fly, harm, Eden pays its bill and tips, then totters down the strip. 7. June arrives. July. Elsewhere, oil rigs stamp deeper and harder and more. Ransom is called on utopia. Diamonds found on Saturn array themselves against its ice. How will we, networks of gardens, collaborate across texts? Over eons of lakes, little melodies persist. Cob, ibis, pigeon, a chord like a fist, a dead nightingale falls off our wrists. Y'all made it. All right, let's do a palate cleanser. Short rhyming poem. It's from a series of poems where I have little portmanteaus as the title. Those are the ones where you just slam the words together and whatever falls out, falls out. Hugh Bird. No one is reading. No one is thinking. No one is singing. The flight path is sinking. The white sky is rumbling. The side roads are crumbling. Over the speed bumps, under the cars, the jet ghouls mourn, the dead dinosaurs. If I'm too slow, the jet ghouls mourn, and one choked bird makes tweet on the hour. How to explain this when caring gets pushed into a mold, jiggling past art? Poor paradise lost, so misunderstood. Evil is hardly less boring than good. The gray sky is gurgling, the ceiling fan wood. Since Satan's not Satan, Satan is us. The only method that works till the end is to honor what's human, to wait for the bird. So, as Han mentioned, I left Chicago, so I thought it would be good if I read one of my goodbye Chicago poems, but it's turned out to be kind of an apocalypse, like goodbye everything poem. Sorry about that. No, not really. I mean, not sorry enough, obviously. It really is the end. I wanted to resist apocalypse trends, but the sun at the brim of the skyline, seen from a garden across the street, sings red light. The streets turned crenels for night rise. I imagine my body dropping onto it, this great city at the edge of the sea, and my flesh parking the tower's sturdy spikes against me, packing the city in. Sure, why not? Cuddle Chicago one last time and curve along the lakeshore trail and admit I have grown fat and capable of administering the entire earth after years of ordinary weariness, like women at a witch's Sabbath drawing from the Renaissance. Let the moon do their backs and bellies like wind and come from the grit of the chalk so thick at their necks, the many hands at work, eyes drawn down to crumpled paper, used up, language dead. Is that the mane of a goat at my feet when I lean back and let the sun flinch behind the tall buildings of Michigan Avenue? As the sculpture garden grows cold and dark, I am warm. If only I were the end of the world. I think pessimism's okay, but I'm just going to read one that's like slightly less pessimistic. Person can do this. Can we really feel the planet as local through media lapse? Astrology is mainly weird now because we can't see the stars, making estrangement from empire official. When I use the app through my bedroom wall, data comes forth as absconded messiah, bad materialist. Will you let the woman asking why you have wax in your mouth reach in? I'm looking in diagrams everywhere for the ratchet winch that prevents backsliding in endeavors beyond our power, searching for teeth to catch us in time. Like if space is the teeth. Like if we could exert entangled forces more than metaphorically. Last night I saw the Big Dipper fall backwards into a soup of city clouds dotting the west coast of Michigan, held in emergency management, and failed to see Leo chasing Cancer up the dim ecliptic. But I will look again. I will hear that acid drone of clicks promising it's possible that one person can do this. Since all words are already in the sky, full of their reasons. Since the screen becomes a second sky without period or season, who is not able? Scrolling down the deep sea site, remember the cables. Let's mean the universe. What do the stars write all day while the sun keeps us from reciprocating, I imagine. Let's imagine they're sirens of an emergency that's time. And though they have taken the solemn aspect of mute, facts interrupted at best by dust, it is possible to shift into a faith that they are blaring, that there is something to be said, intermittently, as best, to fuck with mandatory forward and be ourselves. And by us, let's mean the universe. Who here knows Savonarola? Who Savonarola is? Okay, we have some people. I'm going to just do it, so just in case. Girolamo Savonarola was a super popular prophet in 15th century, and he was condemning the corrupt life of 15th century Medici Florence. He had this vision, a prophetic vision, that Florence was going to be the new Jerusalem. But if you wanted to get the new Jerusalem here on earth, you had to destroy all the art. Most, because that kind of thing was getting in the way of God. So eventually, lots of history stuff happened. People turned against him. He had been condemned for preaching while being banned for preaching by the Pope. Long story, but he eventually gets hanged and then burned. And prior to that, while he was being tortured, he admitted that none of his prophecies were true, that they weren't from God. He had made it all up. So later in prison, between the torture and the hanging and the burning, he was really ashamed that he had confessed this. So he wrote a meditation on Psalm 51, which is this amazing psalm about being forgiven from a really profound, deep sin. So basically, he has this meditation in Felix Ego, which is like sad me, unhappy me. And it's him. He's just doubling down on his belief that he was, in fact, a prophet, and that betraying himself was actually the real crime against God. So, little intense. Now you can understand where I'm coming from. On first looking into me, I got some Savonarola. A wall came out of the world, like in a film by Stanley Kubrick, where he wants to show the monster. But here, the monster is the end. I bet you thought I'd say the monster is you. It isn't. Your monstrosity is a vain fight against the monster. Or more, the fight never to see the monster or smell it. What does the end even smell like? It smells as much like petrichor as you'd expect. Except there is no rain. No rain, but the rain that breaks the pavement, a marathon of rains, an ultra marathon. The worst thing is the wall doesn't have a face. It makes you think it has a face. You orient yourself to it by feeling a face confronting you, confronting me, contre me, my crime, my crimeliness. But there is no mei deus. There is no miserere. Only incidentally is their unhappy ego. Meanwhile, there are hangings and even burnings still. They knock on the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. The fucked up echo of abundance. We are doors in that wall. We are optional doors. When we choose to open, we could say miracle, reorientation, a horrible gas, the atmosphere to which we open. We get to say who breathes it. What a glory, which I have prepared for those who love thee. Hear the echo of abundance. On the note of abundance, this is finally the kind of ekphrastic poem you might have been mentioning. If anyone knows it, it's a painting by Watteau that shows the expulsion or voyage from Kythera. And the poem also reflects on my disappointment when I looked up the word refugium. Candide, on Watteau's expulsion demoralized. I love our excess of sandedness, which flows up in the sky, twinkling toward the dog star, like Watteau's baby stream of Cythera, launched by wealth and myth, in pigment undespoiled. Why does the lake reflect a bluer sky than the one in which we twirl from a refugium that won't exist? I wanted flight turned back on itself and got instead a cheating tank. Imagine whittling breathing down, stripping away the air till life has more to do with sand than sadness or candor. Let's roll into the mud at the front edge of Santasia. Who dress dead children as gods? Here's one that is one of my favorite paintings, and I think I've caught a former student from my Northern Run class here, so you're going to remember this one. This is a painting by Jan van Eyck. It's in Madrid. It's of the Annunciation. It's a diptych. So if you Google Jan van Eyck Madrid Annunciation, you can see this really exciting, crazy 15th century painting. The bird. Pain is often a reality effect. I mean, sometimes there's no real referent in the world for a feeling, just the sense that this is real. A stone dove floating above a stone virgin, and realer than the virgin, which is what the paint announces, if believed. In my lifelong quest against modernist purity, I hunted down the neurons and all the presumed modes of trapping sense and organizing it. I ducked beneath the dry wing pit of the angel. I squeezed my thick, dark blood and reflected what stood in front of me as dead. I said, the projection, of statues, the form of learning, earning. We have to curate carefully the incarnation nation of ghosts, our ghosts. Thanks, y'all.